Hey folks, it's Nate. It's time I got back to the drawing board, and tonight I want to talk a little bit more about character design. Now, in case you missed the introduction last week, I'll link that in the description. But basically, I want to talk about the language of shape and form and how we use it in the creating of characters, or at least how I use it in the creating of characters. If you want to hear a little more in depth about that and how I came to this approach, well, I talk about it a little bit more in last week's video. I'm not going to cover it again here. We're just going to dive right into talking about designing female characters, some of the basic shapes at work, and how I've applied that. Now, the female form, most people recognize it as the classic hourglass shape, the idealized female form. I tend to break it down a little bit further into two diamonds. You can kind of see here the top half of the body makes up one diamond shape. The bottom half of the body kind of makes up another. These can be, perfect diamonds, or they can be oblong one way or another. Like if you want a really long waist, you might have, a thinner diamond like this. And then, for really long legs, again, like this. Of course, you can do the Oda Sensei, where he just sort of draws an X, and then there's, that. That's an advanced technique, though. I don't know if I would recommend starting with that. But I decided on the diamond shape fairly early on as the quintessential feminine shape for me. And and not only does that work in the overall body, but some of the classic female parts, like you can do a double diamond like this, and then just sort of fill it in, and you got breasts. Or if you're looking to do hips, again, two diamonds like this is kind of a good outline for the buttocks. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to say, oh wow, you're so fixated on those two parts of the body. Well, let's be totally honest. When you're attempting to visually communicate femininity, the most feminine traits on the body are probably birthing hips and the breasts, both of which have to do with child rearing, which is the most unique gendered function in, well, pretty much any sexually dimorphic mammal. So these features are a visual shorthand for female. Having to do with, because they both have to do with child rearing. And of course, they are very sexually suggestive as well, probably because they're both also related to child rearing. So yeah, for me, the female form is kind of defined by the diamond shape. Now, this is not as quite as strong as the triangular shape that in male forms. One of the things that makes women different from men is they tend to be very rounded. Female biology is different from males, where males tend to put on fat strictly around the waist. Women develop a lot of subcutaneous fat, which is under the skin. So they develop a more rounded, a softer shape. So there are very few hard angles on women. Even muscular women, they tend to be a little smoother, a little rounder, especially when they're not flexing. Of course, bodybuilders, they only look swole, or however you want to put it, when they're in specific poses that are designed to highlight their muscle mass. So at rest, even very fit, athletic women tend to have a softer look to them. So the shapes in the female form are not going to be quite as distinctive as they are in the male form. But yeah, I mean, even Oda with his method here, he kind of rounds things out, because it would just look kind of silly if you just had that X waist there. Anyways, so that's the basic shapes that I approach female character design with. I have diamonds in mind a lot. So let's look at that applied in a couple of character designs. So this character is from Hexwood. I haven't finalized a name. She is the younger sister of one of the main characters, Han Yudeng. and I had a name in mind, and then I was doing some research, and it doesn't quite fit what I want. So it's name to be determined, I guess. To finalize there. There's a fair bit more of that this week than there was last week, but there it is. So, what are some important aspects of character design? Well, first of all, you can see in her overall character, she has a very, she falls loosely into that diamond. Her clothes kind of hide that. One of the um, more classically, not feminine in modernity, but more classically modern, was to be demure and to hide your charms. So she wears this very flowing garment that kind of obscures some of her curves, but still leaves enough hints there to provoke the imagination. This was common since she is from a setting that is supposed to be culturally the equivalent of the late 1800s. That's appropriate for her dress. Furthermore, she doesn't come from a Western culture. She comes from an Eastern one. If you're familiar, especially with China, she comes from the Middle Kingdom, which is the world's equivalent to China. And if you're familiar with Chinese traditions in dress and in cultural gender signifiers, pretty much the only one that we would recognize from Western culture is a thin waist. A lot of the other ones are different. For example, China had a culture-wide foot fetish for centuries. So like just being able to see her feet here, this is very risque for her culture and time period. A couple of other things in the character design. Her hair is always up in a bun. It is always very neat. She is a very in control character. She holds herself to very high standards, which is both a positive and a negative that the story will play around with. But she has in psychology terms, she is very conscientious. She knows what standards are, and she has a very hard time deviating from them. So instead of, you could have a character like this with hair in roughly the shape, but you might, put a couple of locks hanging down the sides of the face or something like that. That's not part of her character design because she is uptight, basically. Another thing is in her jewelry and accessorization. So she has this ring and this hair pin, hair accessory, however you want to look at it. Both of these represent balance. The Middle Kingdom hews to a very Taoist / Confucian philosophy. Very little Buddhism in the culture there, or Buddhism equivalent. So she has, you can kind of see here, the yin yang symbol is a square cut on the ring, and then again, you can kind of see the yin yang in that one half of the hairpin is black, one half is white, and then dangling in the opposite configuration, we have these small white and black beads. However, in addition, she has a jade stone set here. That represents the mixing or the blending to find balance. And this is indicative of her clan, the Han clan in the Middle Kingdom in the Hexwood world. They symbolize themselves with the three elements of onyx, pearl, and green jade. Those are sort of the clan colors. And then her family in the clan has a hereditary weapon, which is also part of the clan culture. And so again, we have the pearl, the onyx, and the green jade. 9 stones set along the spine of the sword. If you've ever seen wuxia movies where they have those in English, they're typically referred to as 9-ring swords, where they have rings through the back. I'm trying to evoke that with this again because she is from a Chinese equivalent culture. So this is what I call the 9-stone broadsword instead of a 9-ring broadsword. So that actually is not specific to her. She doesn't carry it day to day. But it is a clan weapon, and it's a more important part of her activity in the storyline than it is her brother's. So I designed it to go with her, and so I consider it a part of her character design. Even though later I would expand the idea to it being a hereditary clan weapon. This was originally I originally had different plans for it. I don't have those plans anymore, so they're not as important. But anyway, so there are some basics. Of course, the ring has, instead of points, it has diamonds because it is a feminine ring. But also, this kind of fits better with the setting on the ring being a rectangle. So next character, this is Sadana Grace, codename Naga. She is from a different project that I will probably be talking more about sometime in the future, but her basic design, she is what is sometimes known as a tactile kinetic. Basically, she can apply force via telekinesis to anything she's touching. So this is kind of like super strength, except she doesn't need to worry about things like traction. She doesn't have to brace herself. She doesn't. There's no recoil or impact if she like stops a runaway car by putting her hand on it. It's just it's telekinesis, but she can only exert it via touch. And one of the downsides of that is that she is constantly aware of all the things that she touches. And so all tactile kinetics find loose clothing and things of that nature to be very distracting. So they wear this tight form-fitting clothing, and there is actually a male tactile kinetic who is in the story, and he dresses in much the same way, very form-fitting clothing. So it's very easy to see, the loose diamond shape in her design here. In costume, because she is something you could really call this more of a uniform. She belongs to an organization known as the Guardians Guild, and they are basically an alliance of people with superpowers that functions for the public good, but they are not in and of themselves law enforcement agents. So she wears. She has short hair. That's another aspect of her being a tactile kinetic, and also represents that she's very practical. I think of short-haired women as practical. I think a lot of people do, because you tend to see women who do a lot of work with their hands. They will cut their hair short. She has this scarf around her waist. This both serves to emphasize the waist, which is, of course, the center of that hourglass or double diamond female form. This is also, as with male characters, is a thing that emphasizes her as a character of action. She spends a lot of time in movement. In fact, her scarf is her primary tactile kinetic weapon. She will use it as a whip, something to grab with. She'll do the Indiana Jones and climb up with it. And her call sign is actually Naga. So she will use it to extend. She'll wrap it around her foot, and she'll lean off of ledges or things like that. So she looks something like a snake woman, hence Naga. So that's her call sign. And last but not least, in uniform, her insignia or her iconography is a hand, because again, she is a tactile kinetic. So touch and feel is very important to her. She has a sense of touch that far exceeds the human norm. She can literally count grains of sand by sticking her hand in a sandbox. She gains a lot of information by touch that other people wouldn't get. When she is using her scarf as a whip or as a tentacle to grab things, stuff like that, she gets full sensory information through it, through her kinetic powers. So the hand is a permanent part of her iconography, and I put it on the shoulder to indicate, when someone's hand is on your shoulder, um, you tend to think of it as a reassuring gesture when someone puts an arm around you, or a gesture of safety. And since she is from the Guardians Guild, they represent safety and safekeeping. So that's where I put it. It's very important to draw out the right size, otherwise it looks skeevy. So there's that. Finally, we have a character here that is kind of in process. I don't know if this design is going to be permanent. This character does not have a name, or even I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with her yet. I was simply drawing, and I wanted to work on something new, and this is what came out. So a couple of things. First of all, so as you can see, the cut of her costume is kind of emphasizes this diamond shape. By scooping out the shoulders like this, it kind of gives that first diamond impression there, and then as it comes back down around to these thigh-high boots, again emphasizing the diamond shape through the cut of the boots, and so that kind of draws attention to that very feminine figure that says, okay, yes, this is a woman. And you don't even have to ask her pronouns. It's just right there. It's so amazing. It's like, people's minds are hardwired to work this way. Anyways, in addition, she is a character of action. So she has this long flowing hair that emphasizes her movements. She might be kind of flighty because, long hair is a hazard, kind of like a cape. But so she may be less aware of that kind of thing, or she may just be a very happy-go-lucky kind of a person. So additionally, she has these kind of I haven't decided if they're prosthetics, or if they are some kind of restraint, but her hands and the legs, from the knee and elbows downwards, are more energy constructs than they are actual flesh and blood. So these kind of serve as a restraint or a way to channel them, and as a kind of way to sneak more diamonds into the her basic design. These are kind of integrated into her knee and elbow joints there. And I noticed when I started working on a language of shape for character design, I noticed that more and more my women had these points on their boots, whereas when they had boots, and men had just sort of straight cut off boots more and more. So I find that continues, even subconsciously without my thinking about it, to work its way into my character designs. Other things that work here, the prosthetics themselves, you can kind of see outlined here. For the legs currently, there is no like foot part. They just sort of end at this little point, or maybe they burn with thrust all the time, and she just sort of hovers. I think that would be cool. The hands are a little more restrained, as she does have to actually pick up and handle things in her day to day. So they have these caps on them, but they have these glowing lines, as if the power within is always straining to get out. I kind of like that look to it. And then the palm here is maybe a projecting window, something like that. And so there's still a lot of room to grow here. There's room on her costume for some kind of iconography, if I wanted to go that way, or her costume could have layers to it, maybe a vest or some kind of girdle, something like that. Or she could, wear a cloak or a cape, or, a hood, something like that. But on the whole, I kind of like this design. It's a work in progress. It has places it can go, and yeah, so that's kind of my process. I start by, assembling a couple of basic costume ingredients. In this case, the high neck with the exposed shoulders, the boots and long gloves, things like, and the prosthetics, and then I tend to tweak outward from those essential ingredients until I find something that I like. I am a fan of simple costume designs and simple character designs. You may have already figured this out from the first couple of videos I've made on character design. But there you have it. So a few thoughts on female character design, and I hope you enjoyed it. So let me know what you think in the comments. There's a like and a subscribe button down below. Use them as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.